The horn of Helm, Hamm-HER-hand shall sound in the deep. One last time.
Warner Brothers did a thing, guys. They released 20 minutes of footage today. And, it's about the upcoming War of the Rohirrim. So, did Warner Brothers get out of its own way and can thoroughly give a trouncing to Amazon and that god-awful abomination known as Rings of Power? Of course not.
Whom do you serve? Saruman.
This is the story of the most powerful king in Rohan's history, someone who defeated his enemies with his bare fists. Kamiyama tells EW, why did his lineage have to end with him? I think there is a lesson in hubris there, and also for a need for responsibility and awareness in their power. We live in an age where all over the world we face the reality of war again. What then is power? What is the responsibility of those who possess it? It is something they need to think about by thinking together with those who don't.
This is about power and who is allowed to use it.
In the appendices, where the story is drawn from, we get these quite interestingly drawn male characters, and then we get this young female character who is never named, and that was really interesting to me, Boyan says. We know Helm has a daughter, and we know that she was central to the conflict that happened. But myself, and especially screenwriter Phoebe Gittins, were drawn to her. We could feel the weight of being that unnamed daughter, which immediately piqued our interest. Who was she? How did she live? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. I don't understand this obsession with writing the story that Tolkien never wrote.
Geysers of stories just kind of kept on sprouting up everywhere we looked, and we said, this is Tolkien's great untold epic.
They just literally, a few paragraphs above this, were talking about a lesson in hubris. Why are you trying to tell a story that is not Tolkien's? Everyone was like, oh, well, guess what? Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson are executive producing on The War of the Rohirrim. It's going to be fantastic. No. The proof is in the modern day pudding. It gets worse, guys. It gets worse. It's going to undermine Éowyn in such a horrific way. It's truly just devastating. Not to mention Éomer and the Rohirrim themselves. In the War of the Rohirrim, Helm's daughter is named Hera. I'm sure it's not a coincidence that they chose the name of the habitually cheated on wife of Zeus in Greek mythology, but we'll just put that off to the side so we don't go down another 35-minute tangent rabbit hole. And she's voiced by Gaia Weiss. The actress says her character bears a stronger resemblance to the heroines of Hayao Miyazaki's films like Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is a wonderful film, but it's not Lord of the Rings, than to classic Lord of the Rings heroines like Arwen and Éowyn. She would lay down her life for her people, Weiss says. Comparing her to Arwen or Éowyn, they're already fully formed women. What I loved about Hera is she's fierce, she's complex, she's rebellious. That's Éowyn! That's Éowyn! That's Arwen! Tell me you've never read the books without telling me you've never read the books. The appendices that this is based on is barely enough for 3 pages, and they're making an entire feature-length film out of this, and they're not even following the 3 pages of appendices that they have. And they're also insulting the established, incredible female characters that already exist in Lord of the Rings. Arwen defies her father. She rebels against going to the Grey Havens and living her life with the Eldar. She rejected that to stay with Aragorn. That is their story. And he passed before she did, and so she was left to live out the sorrow of the doom of men. Éowyn stood between the king of Angmar and slew him. Not because she wanted the glory or the accolades or because she wanted the attention or she wanted to prove that she was just as good as the men. She wanted to save her uncle's life. She wanted to protect the person that she loved. Completely, absolutely disrespected and bastardized. This should have been a layup for Warner Brothers, and they cannot get out of their own way. Told you it got worse. Hailing from New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers Animation, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim delves into a short episode in Tolkien's original work around the war between Rohan and the Dunlendings, focusing on the daughter of Rohan King Helm-HER-hand, a lone survivor of the carnage. Well, maybe it's not so bad. Not so bad. Not so bad. It is the first time a Lord of the Rings adaptation has been led by a female character. Unnamed in the original book, she has been called Hera, as we knew, in the anime adaptation and is voiced by Gaia Wise. While this is a lot of setup, you can both see where the story is going for the War of the Rohirrim, with this inter-family squabble blowing up into full-scale battle, and Hera eventually having to lead her people, calling on the power of a seemingly long-lost tribe of female warriors. It's dead. You've killed it.
He's dead, Jim.
You simply cannot get out of your own way, Warner Brothers. Nobody wants this. This is not the story that Tolkien wrote. If he had wanted to name her, he would have. If he thought that she was significant enough to share the name, he would have. His line ends. Helm-HER-hand's line ends. That is what we know for certain. His nephew takes the throne in Edoras after him. That is what we know. It is the second line of King. The fact that this entire story is going to focus on essentially a female Éowyn, Arwen, and modern day Mary Sue, they just won't learn their lesson. This gives me even less hope for The Hunt for Gollum. I don't care if Philippa Boyens is involved. I don't care if Peter Jackson is involved. It's been 25 years. I don't know what they had to say or what they had to do to be able to get on this team, but what has been shared is horrifying. If you want to tell a story about a strong, powerful female warrior who is imbued with the ability to use magical artifacts or command a tribe of female warriors or male warriors or warriors in general, take on gods, take on monsters, stand toe-to-toe with Hercules. You have Xena. Now, please don't go ruin Xena. I beg of you. Do not go ruin Xena. But these women that you are claiming need representation, they already exist in film, in television, in stories. Your inability or willful ignorance to hunt down and watch or read about these women does not mean they do not exist. Lack of knowledge on your part does not constitute lack of existence of strong female protagonists, characters. Throughout film and literature history, or history in general, there are incredible stories of women doing amazing things, self-sacrificing, heroic, inspiring. I can think of several off the top of my head. Saint Felicity of Rome, she is known as the saint that was martyred 8 times because she had to watch all 7 of her sons be crucified. None of them renounced their faith, and she was given a chance to give up Christ every single time one of her sons were murdered. She refused to do it, and none of her sons would do it. They were all martyred. You have the story of Saint Perpetua and Felicity. This was about 900 years after Saint Felicity of Rome. Saint Perpetua was a noblewoman. She was well off. She had everything for her, and she willingly walked into the Colosseum and faced off against the gladiators and the beasts. She told the other men and women that were there with her to hold fast and to not fear. Do not let this last hour break us. You have Saint Joan d'Arc, one of the most famous, inspirational women in all of history. So do not sit there and tell me that great women do not exist. Do not tell me that, there haven't been an opportunity. Women have been ignored, or their stories we need to lift up these imaginary women because there aren't enough women in history for young girls to look up to. That is ignorance speaking. And not only would J.R.R. Tolkien be ashamed of what you've done to his story, but he would be ashamed that you would have to take a character of his to make it an allegory for modern day, to make yourselves feel better about telling a story about a woman whose real name, we don't even know. Get out of your own way, Warner Brothers. Tell the stories that Tolkien wrote. Stop doing what Amazon is doing. Stop doing what everyone else is doing. Focus on good quality story content. To call this an insult is perhaps the mildest that you could possibly get. A perversion is much more accurate. Both of his sons died, one defending Edoras and the other attempting to feed his people. And then he was frozen to death, and he still managed to instill fear in his enemies. His daughter, I'm sure he loved fiercely, which is why he did not agree to the marriage of Wolf. But that was not what started the war. What started the war is that Freka died from getting hit by Helm-HER-hand, and Wolf wanted revenge. And he almost got it. You want to sit there and speak of hubris and how we should view the world and what is truly a Tolkien-inspired story. How about instead of writing a Tolkien-inspired story, you write Tolkien's story. You draw Tolkien's story. It is far too late to be pulling the chalks out now. This is supposed to come out in 6 months. But if there is any way that you can fix it, I strongly suggest you get on it right now. This isn't a story of a daughter who survived when her brothers and her father perished, and she had to take up the sword, and she had to find ancient female ancestor warrior tribes. And she is actually the one who defended Helm's Deep. But because she loved her father so much, she named it for him instead of taking the glory for herself. No, miss me with that nonsense. If that trope is in here, I will come unglued. We want the story of Helm-HER-hand, not the nameless daughter. Let me know what you think down in the comments, folks. I appreciate every single one of you from the bottom of my soul. And as always, God bless, Godspeed, and have a fantastic day.